Ladies and gents, and this was The Glorious Revolution, a Dutch Conquest, short animated documentary by the channel History Matters. I saw the video when Dutch ate their prime minister, and I'm like, what the fuck? So that video was really interesting, and I had some misconceptions in that video that got cleared up pretty fast. This is why I love reacting to historical videos, science videos in general, because when I don't know about something and I have some kind of misconception, somebody in the comments will tell me something, right? In that one, I just thought the British were the most powerful. People told me that, first of all, there was no such thing as British, it was English power, right? It was England versus Dutch in sometimes, and Spanish were the one who's dominant. And then I did some research and realized, like in this 17th century, even though Dutch were more prosperous because of the Dutch East India Trading Company, right, which kind of lasted 2 centuries or something. In the 17th century, Spain was the global power in just overall force, right? Britain became more of a global power in, I guess, in the 19th and 20th century, and that kind of thing. And in 18th century, I guess there were like 4 or 5 powers that were kind of leveling things, right? Nobody became too powerful because that's how the politics were at that time. People made sure that nobody becomes way too powerful around that time. So that was really interesting because I knew that Spain was a power in a time, but I forgot what the time period was. But now when I really think about it, like, in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, Spain is a really powerful, force in Navy. And that is basically around the 17th century. So I should have known that, but apparently I didn't. So I thought, the Dutch defeated British. How can that happen? But then the British Navy that I think of was not a thing around this time. So yeah, I guess this is when the Dutch conquered somewhat of an England or something. I don't know. I mean, somebody told me that I should react to this, video. But yeah, I don't know. It's gonna be. I'm pretty sure Dutch probably didn't conquer England because I don't think anybody did besides Romans for for a long time. But I don't know. This is gonna be a fun video. Let's watch it. Remember, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so I know which type of videos to react to more. I like to think that after all this time, I have some general knowledge in historical topics in general. I have more than good enough knowledge in science. I like to think that. But yeah, I always learn things. So, comment down if you think I should react to some certain video. And yeah, let's watch it.
Many nations have different interpretations of shared historical moments. This discrepancy in how history is viewed by two opposing sides is pretty clear with respect to the 1688 Glorious Revolution. In Britain, it is mostly seen as British noblemen overthrowing a tyrannical king and replacing him with a constitutional monarch. Whereas in the Netherlands, it's seen as that time we conquered Britain and Ireland. So who is correct? Was it a case of the British Isles being brought to heel by the Dutch, or the English inviting a foreigner to bring an end to its own disorder? Before getting into too much detail, here's a brief overview of events. In the year 1660, England, Scotland and Ireland had restored its monarchy after a period of republicanism under Oliver Cromwell. The returned King Charles II had his...
some rich guy basically killed off the king or whoever that was and just basically took the throne for himself or something. So there was no line, right? For a certain period of time before a Scottish king basically, it can be traced back to the lineage of the kings before that who basically restored the monarchy. But there was a brief period of time where there was no real king.
His own problems during his reign, but the worst thing he did was in 1685 when he died. Charles had converted to Catholicism on his deathbed and had no children. Thus, the throne would pass to his brother James, who was already a Catholic, not something Protestant England was very keen on. James, upon becoming king, promised to respect the religious institutions of England, but fun fact, no. The English nobility, whilst unhappy with James, weren't too concerned because he was getting on a bit and also had no heirs. Until 1688, when he did. Onto the scene comes William of Orange, the Protestant stadtholder of the Dutch Republic, and not to be confused with his great-grandfather, William the Silent, also known as William of Orange. William was also concerned about having yet another opponent in Europe. Plus, since he was married to James's daughter, Mary, he did have a claim to the English throne. William was willing to act, but wanted to be sure that he would get some support from the nobles. To his rescue came a group of leading noblemen who promised their support. And with that he came on over, bringing with him 15,000 troops and a fleet larger than the Spanish Armada. When he got there, support for James
basically the thing with the Europe is especially with the things like, England, France, even the Dutch here, that their royal families basically can trace their lineages in each other's empires, right? Some cousin, sister, whatever. So even though, this might be seen as a Dutch conquest, right? But obviously it's just like, I have the real I have the real claim in the throne of England. So you're not going to really think as this is a Dutch conquest, would you? But yeah.
Basically evaporated instantly, and having lost his army to desertion, he opted to run away to France. After this, it was argued that running away was tantamount to abdicating, and so William and Mary were made joint monarchs of England, Scotland and Ireland in 1689. The condition was that William accept that he ruled as a constitutional monarch and that his power had its limits. Britain's modern form of monarchy was born. So, the interpretations of the Glorious Revolution are of course very different. The English version of events is that since William refused to come over without the support of some noble lords, that this wasn't an invasion but instead a Dutch-backed English coup. This position is supported by the fact that William...
That's what I'm saying. Like, it's not an invasion if, it's all about the, I guess, inside thing, right? I mean, he just used Dutch's help, basically.
His leading of the troops wasn't made king in his own right, but was given equal authority with Mary. Also, William had to agree to the 1689 Bill of Rights, which limited his power as king, which is not exactly something a conqueror would accept. As such, since the Dutch were also Protestants, it's argued that it was a mutually beneficial deal that strengthened the Protestant world. As for the Dutch interpretation, it's mostly seen as a conquest or at the very least a coup that would have failed without them. The evidence they used to support this claim is the fact that William didn't land to a grand welcome by the Lords but landed with an army of 15,000 Dutchmen and was backed by an armada. The Dutch position is seen through the lens of William being an intelligent strategist. He saw the turmoil in England, Scotland and Ireland as an opportunity. The Netherlands was surrounded by foreign enemies who saw its existence as a threat. One argument is that it was the Dutch, not the English, who directed events. Threatened by foreign invasion, William needed to strengthen his hand and so appealed to disaffected lords in Britain to rebel. Turmoil in the British Isles offered a...
See, the problem with anything throughout the history is like, in the end, it all comes down to who's left when the dust settles, right? So we know after this, British Empire becomes a big thing, while Dutch Empire does not. So with that, you can just think like, oh, come on, really? I mean, if the Dutch conquered Britain, or however version you want to think about it, how did Britain become such a big power later on, this and that? Why didn't Dutch do something or whatever, right? So that's the problem with history in a way. That strongest somehow writes the history in a way, right? So obviously, you can see this as a Dutch conquest, even though, certain people, if you really look at it, you can see like, okay, Dutch are the one who did this, so it's a Dutch conquest. But the British version is also right, English version, like it's the help from Dutch, right? All this was settled with the help of the Dutch, right? And like he said, like, he agreed to those terms, like a conqueror wouldn't agree to terms like that. And eventually British Empire becomes the largest empire in the world, so yeah. I don't know, that might sound stupid, but there you go.
Rich opportunity for William, since Englishmen and English money would strengthen the Dutch position. It's argued that whilst William did want support from the nobility, this was largely a formality, and that his position meant that invading was a risk he'd have taken anyway, since the pros outweighed the cons. It wasn't a crown he necessarily needed, it was the combined wealth of the Dutch Republic and the Kingdom of England, Scotland and Ireland to fight the coming wars with his Catholic rivals. William got what he wanted, but also so did the Protestant majority in England, which is what makes this debate so interesting. Did the Dutch conquer England? Well, they turned up with an army but faced little resistance, and many in England were content to allow William and Mary to rule. In the end, little force was used to gain England, but a great deal was needed to subdue Scotland and Ireland, which is why for many, the Glorious Revolution is both a conquest and a coup.
Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed this episode and thank you for watching.
They turn up with an army, but nobody resisted them. It's like, if you insult somebody, say, oh, you're a poo-poo head, and like, yeah, you're right, I'm a poo-poo head. I mean, are you even insulting at that point? It's something, I don't know. It's like I said, I don't know if I explained it right or not. I'm pretty sure people will have a problem with that in comments, but strongest right history. Eventually, British Empire will become the largest empire in the world after this, obviously decades, centuries later, and Dutch Empire will not. So, Dutch, can you really see this Dutch conquering England? I don't know. But yeah. Alright, people, that was the Glorious Revolution Dutch Conquest. I guess it's depend on how you look at it. That's basically that's the problem the world faces right now, right? It's all up to your interpretation. Everything is up to your interpretation. Even the science gets debated, for fuck's sake. Is Earth round or flat? Whatever. Are there aliens or even the agreed upon facts gets debated. So yeah, you just know you exist. Beyond that, is open to interpretation. So yeah, right. If you like my reaction, like, subscribe, and yeah, I'll see you next time.